Happy Monday, my friends. I hope everyone had a good weekend. If I could just pause for one moment, we're going to talk about some really crazy January 6th stuff, a revelation that happened in federal court from a federal prosecutor who was involved in January 6th. We're going to talk about that today. But I just want to take a moment and say how much I love the work-life balance that I have right now. Over the weekend, I watched Piers Morgan's interview of Governor Ron DeSantis. If you guys haven't watched that already, it's pretty good. It's pretty entertaining. I like Piers Morgan. I know he's a liberal, although I wouldn't categorize him as a leftist anymore. I know he got really famous in the United States after he had that back and forth with Ben Shapiro over guns. He used to be very radically anti-Second Amendment. I don't know where he is on that issue anymore, but he's certainly anti-woke, and he's a very entertaining person. He's one of the liberals that I really, truly enjoy watching. I think he's a very talented person. He interviewed Ron DeSantis, and DeSantis had not sat down for this kind of long-form interview before. And obviously, you saw the headlines. This was the first time DeSantis kind of threw an attack or two towards Trump in the lead up to the primary. DeSantis has not formally announced that he's going to run for president, but we all know that he's going to. So I watched that, and then I watched the counterpart to that. It was Trump's rally in Texas. He was over in Waco, and he just was savage throwing attacks at DeSantis. But very interestingly, the crowd's reaction was, I thought, the most interesting part of that rally. So I watched both of those two things at the same time. I was potty training my 2-year-old daughter. So how's that for work-life balance? We went through, a couple dozen pairs of pants, I think. But yeah. So the January 6th stuff we are going to get to in a moment. But I've changed my view on something, and I want to walk you through why I changed my view. For a long time, I did not like party infighting. I didn't like when Republicans levied attacks against each other, because I thought, guys, if we're fighting over minutia in our own party, then what are we not fighting against? We're not fighting against the Marxists on the other side. So sure, I don't agree with every single person in the Republican Party or every single person in the conservative movement, but my disagreement with the left is to such a larger degree that shouldn't we focus on that? That was the opinion I held previously. And I have to say, my opinion on that has slowly evolved. So that's what I want to start talking about first. Let's get to it. All right, guys, I want to talk to you about 4 Patriots because I love them. I think you will too. Experts say that China is hoarding a massive amount of food. I'm talking like 2/3 of the globe's corn reserves, over half of its rice, and over half of its wheat. But when they're asked about it, the Chinese Communist Party does what they always do. They lie. In fact, one China expert says they will, of course, never admit to something like that. My question here is, what does the Chinese Communist Party know that we don't? Why are they hoarding this food? Well, when it comes to global food shortages, the answer is China is the canary in the coal mine. You see, China is the world's #1 food importer. They rely on us, the rest of the world, to keep their people fed. So they literally cannot afford to mess up, or they're going to face riots, civil panic, or maybe something even worse when their people, over 1 billion people, can't eat. So what does this mean for you and for me? 2 words: food shortages. That's why I highly recommend that you stock up on 4 Patriots survival food. The food kits are compact, they stack easily, they have different breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. They're good for an emergency, so you are prepared. Right now, I got you a good deal. You can get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriots survival food by using my promo code Liz at checkout. Just go to 4patriots.com, use my promo code Liz, and you can get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriots survival food. That's 4patriots.com, promo code Liz. 4patriots.com, promo code Liz. Okay, so my view has evolved on in-party fighting. I still am not the hugest fan of it, but I have to confess, when I was watching the Piers Morgan interview with Ron DeSantis and then watching and listening to Trump's comments about DeSantis in Waco, Texas over the weekend, I kind of enjoyed it. I really did. I thought I was going to be annoyed about it because I thought, guys, what are we, in March? The first primary debate between these candidates isn't even until August, and even that is so far in advance of the presidential election in November of 2024. Are we really going to spend this time bickering amongst ourselves versus fighting back against the people who right now hold the power? Biden in the White House, a Democrat-controlled Senate, and a barely Republican House of Representatives, and a deep state, of course, that's populated with far leftists and neo-Marxists. I kind of enjoyed it, though. I really did. So Trump in Waco, Texas, I want to start with that because his attacks against DeSantis are savage attacks. They're not gentlemanly gentlemanly sparring. It's not gentlemanly sparring. It's not Trump saying, well, let me show you what the difference between me and DeSantis is so that you can choose for yourself who you like better. No, he's trying to destroy DeSantis, and this is what he said. Take a listen.
When a man comes to me, tears in his eyes, he's at almost nothing in the polls. And he's fighting somebody that's at 42, and he's got almost $30 million in the bank. He's at almost nothing. He's got no cash. And I said, I can't give you an endorsement. There's no way you can win. You're dead. But he fought a little bit, like 150. He was certainly no Jim Jordan, that I can tell you. He fought a little bit, just a little bit, on impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, meaning on television, because I didn't know him very well. But I saw him, so he came and he really wanted. I said, you can't win, can you? How do you can win? Sir, if you endorse me, I'll win. Please. Please, sir, endorse me. And I said, all right, let's give it a shot, because honestly, the Secretary of Agriculture, Adam Putnam, good man, but I never met him. I didn't know him, so I don't feel guilty about it. You know, if you don't know somebody. I wish I knew him, actually. You want to know the truth, I wouldn't have done this. So what happened is, I said, let's give it a shot, Ron. And I endorsed him, and he became like a rocket ship. Within one day, the race was over. He got the nomination.
Okay. So those are not new attacks, right? These have been attacks that Trump has been levying against DeSantis over on Truth Social for several weeks now, maybe the past month and a half. But what's different about this time is the people standing behind Trump. Trump rallies are notoriously raucous events. They're high energy events. Trump interacts with the audience. This is not going to an academic speech. This is something you participate in when you go to a Trump rally. Usually people at Trump rallies, when Trump says something they like, they cheer, they scream, they get into it. But that crowd, did you see how uncomfortable that crowd was? Read the body language. The body language of the people standing behind Trump, they started kind of shrinking into themselves. They were holding their hands crossed in front of them, which is a defensive posture. Some of the guys tilted their chins down and in a submissive way and started fiddling with their hats. Very still, no sounds, just discomfort. That is something, it'll be interesting to see if Trump picks up on this, because one of his strengths when he was on the campaign trail in 2015 and 2016 was reading his crowd. He actually tested a lot of his policy material on rally crowds. And if they liked it, he ran with it. If they didn't like it, he tweaked it, rolled it out again. He did this with names, insults, the name calling that he did, labeling other people, his opponents, with these funny nicknames. He tried those out at rallies to see how people responded to it. But he's not reading this crowd. And the reason for that, right before he goes into these attacks on DeSantis, he actually admitted that his advisors and the people around him keep telling him, sir, it's not a good idea to do this. It's not really a good idea to keep being so negative about DeSantis. Don't be obsessive about it. And he said he doesn't care about that advice because he's a loyalty guy. He said, I'm a loyal guy, and when someone's not loyal to me, he let the sentence trailed off, but it's pretty clear what you and I can see, that he can't let that go. And I have some advice for President Trump on what he should do if he wants to beat DeSantis. Now, I'm not on Team DeSantis. I'm not on Team Trump. You guys know that I don't like any politician. I will vote Republican, and I will vote in the primary, and we'll talk about that when it's a lot closer to it. But I fundamentally distrust and am very critical of every single politician that lives, and I encourage you to come on over on my team on this. It's way more fun to analyze politics when you don't feel this personal loyalty that Trump talks about, when you can just step back and be like, well, wait a second, I'm not like on your team. I'm on the team of these principles. I'm on the team of our country, and I want to hire a politician who will help advance my political agenda the best, who will do it the most effectively, who will actually win. And then it's obviously a lot easier to be in this position when politicians are not trustworthy and politicians are who politicians are. But we will have some advice for Trump in just a minute. But DeSantis responded for the very first time. Piers Morgan asked him in this interview, are you running for president? DeSantis said the same thing politicians always say, which, by the way, may be the only thing that DeSantis said that is not true in this interview. He said, we haven't made a decision yet. We will make a decision shortly, but we haven't. Let me just come on record here and say that is not true. Running for president is not something that you decide the day before you announce. It's not something you decide the week before you announce. It's not something you decide the month before you announce. If you're running for president of the United States in modern America, you have made that decision or made it 99% of the way, probably 2 years in advance. You have to build up an apparatus for running for president. You have to glad hand donors. You have to build up your political capital. You have to write a book. You have to increase your name recognition. You have to plan what your agenda is. And this is a ton of work. It's an insane amount of work if you are a candidate that's actually presenting policy ideas and going to address on your website and on the campaign trail actual problems with the US government. So this is not something that you decided at the last second. So I did laugh when I heard DeSantis say, oh, we haven't made a decision on that. Of course he has. Of course he has, and of course he's going to run. He's just waiting to announce until it's much closer to the first primary debate. He wants it to be on his terms, which is fine. It's fine, but just a little behind the scenes here. You don't make a decision about that at the last second. Every single person who's running for the Republican nomination for president in 2024, every single one of them already knows whether they are going to. They've already made that decision. They just have not announced it yet if they are going to. So DeSantis did address, Piers Morgan asked him about Trump's insults and how Trump is attacking him, and this is how DeSantis responded. Take a listen.
What are the differences between you? Well, I know I know him very well. Having now spent time with you, I could immediately identify a few differences. But what do you think are the differences?
Well, I mean, I think there's a few things. I mean, obviously, the approach to COVID was different. I mean, I would have fired somebody like Fauci. I think that he got way too big for his britches, and I think he did a lot of damage. I also think just in terms of my approach to leadership, I get personnel in the government who have the agenda of the people and share our agenda. If you bring your own agenda in, you're gone. We're just not going to have that. So the way we run the government, I think, is no daily drama, focus on the big picture, and put points on the board. And I think that that's something that's very important.
Okay, so the biggest difference between what Trump did in Waco and what DeSantis did, I believe, at the governor's mansion in Tallahassee, Florida, talking to Piers Morgan, is DeSantis won the first round of DeSantis versus Trump because DeSantis just focused on policy. He previously to that had made a passive-aggressive comment about this possible indictment that looks like it probably won't happen now, coming from the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, that's over these hush money payments that Michael Cohen had made on behalf of Trump to Stormy Daniels, who had alleged that she had had an affair with Donald Trump. And DeSantis said, oh, hush money, paid to keep a porn star silent because of an alleged extramarital affair. That's not something that's in my wheelhouse. I don't know about that. That was a passive-aggressive comment. It was a funny one. It was a passive-aggressive comment meant to show, to showcase that DeSantis is a man of good character and that Trump's sexual character has been questionable, maybe even outright not good in the past. Although the Stormy Daniels allegation, I think, is probably not a true one. Stormy Daniels later admitted that it's not true. So be that as it may, DeSantis is doing this the right way. He's saying, listen, this is what Trump did, and this is what I did differently, actually aligning their two records side by side for you to see which choice that you want to make. And that brings me to my advice for President Trump. And we'll get to that in just a second. But first, I want to talk to you about bank on yourself. We've all been brainwashed into believing that the only way to grow our money for retirement is to risk it in the stock market. But this is not true. You can reach your financial goals and your dreams without taking any unnecessary risks. Let me ask you a question. Do you really control your retirement money? If you have a 401k or an IRA or a similar retirement plan, the government actually controls it. They decide how much you can borrow and when you must pay it back, and you will owe taxes and penalties for taking money out too soon or waiting too long, even though it's your money. And thanks to the skyrocketing national debt and a Congress that continues to spend like a drunken sailor, who knows how much you'll have to pay in taxes during a retirement that could last up to 30 years. Bank on yourself is a better way to grow and protect your hard-earned money. This retirement plan alternative has never had a losing year in over 160 years. You are in control. You get access to your money for any purpose with no questions asked and without government penalties or restrictions on how much income you can take or when you can take it. Try doing that with a 401k or IRA. You can't. You can get a free report with all the details on how the Bank on Yourself strategy adds guarantees, predictability, and control to your financial plan. Just go to bankonyourself.com/Liz. That's bankonyourself.com/Liz. Okay, so my advice to President Trump, which I think he should follow, of course, I'm biased about my own advice. My advice to President Trump is go ahead and be savage. Go ahead and legitimately try to defeat your opponent, but don't destroy them. Because ultimately, if you take a step back here it's a good thing to have a lot of competitors, a lot of people who are competing for the Republican nomination for president in 24, because only one of those people is going to secure that nomination, but the rest of them should be the bench for the years to come. We focus on 2024 because it's the next presidential election, but 4 years after that, we have another one. And 4 years after that, we have another one. And 4 years after that, and on and on and on. We need a deep bench of Republican candidates who can step into a void when the leader of a party, like President Trump, if he gets elected, if he gets the nomination and then he's elected in 2024, he's not going to run in 2028. He'll be almost 85 years old. There will need to be someone who can take that mantle and carry it forward. And that's not even taking into consideration the incredible job that DeSantis has done with Florida. Why would you try to destroy someone who has inarguably been the best governor in the United States? Not just the best Republican governor, not just the best COVID governor, but the best governor who has been unafraid to tackle critical race theory, who has been unafraid to tackle queer theory, which manifests everywhere from the schoolroom to the medical industry, to the drag shows that are hosted and performed in front of children. This Governor DeSantis, is a good Republican. He's a good politician, and that's few and far between. So go ahead, President Trump, try to defeat him. I understand that you want to secure the nomination and you don't want DeSantis to secure it. That's fair, and there's nothing wrong with that. But don't destroy him. Because if you destroy him, you're not just destroying him as a candidate for president, you're destroying him as a governor. And that's only operating under the assumption that you actually would be successful in destroying him, which remains to be seen. We don't know if that's the case. There are a lot of people who don't operate under this loyalty, this absolute loyalty philosophy that President Trump operates under, that we just view politicians as politicians. They're not a king. They're not a messiah. They're just politicians. And if we think they're going to do a good job, we'll vote for them. And if we think someone else will do a good job, we'll vote for that person. And it's not that big of a deal. It's not a matter of ultimate betrayal to pick another politician. It's just picking another politician. We're still all teammates. And when one person's useful, great. And when they're not useful anymore, okay, you move on to the next person. So what President Trump should do here is he should compete and he should try to defeat DeSantis. But should he destroy DeSantis? I don't know why he would do that if he's running for president for the right reason. The right reason, of course, is not for personal vindication. The right reason is not to serve his own ego, not to secure his own legacy, but because he believes he's the best person to serve as chief executive for the good of our country. And if you look at it through that lens, then you might share my advice to President Trump, and that is, I'm not sure what good it does to try to destroy someone. I'm not even sure it's going to be effective, and your base does not like it. Here's the thing, though. Here's why I'm kind of enjoying this infighting. A couple months ago, I think I actually said there was some, I forget what it was, but there was some back and forth between Trump and DeSantis. I'm not sure it was even between the two of them, but it was, the media was trying to pit them against each other. And I said, I hate having to talk about stupid things, because a few months ago, it was stupid to talk about this stuff. But I've kind of changed my mind on infighting, because we are growing closer and closer to August, which is when the first Republican primary debate happens. These candidates are obviously announcing. We've had Vivek Ramaswamy, we've had Nikki Haley, we have Donald Trump. These candidates are launching their primary campaigns, and it is time for us to decide which one is going to be our fighter. And I think in this point in history, it has never been as important for us to understand that it's not just a Republican that we need to pick. It's not just saying like, okay, if there's a Republican and a Democrat, pick the Republican because the Republican has an ideological view of our country reflected in their policies that aligns with my own values. No. In the Republican Party, there is a wide diversity of thoughts and beliefs, and many of those thoughts and beliefs are bad. Many of them are just naive. That's why they're bad. They aren't based. They don't understand the political enemy that we're facing. And therefore, I mean, I can name some of these. We don't have to be vague. You have the Liz Cheneys and the Adam Kinzingers and the Mitt Romneys and the Mitch McConnells that just don't get it. They just don't understand what we're facing. They just don't understand that it's not just the left anymore. It's not just liberals anymore. It's not just Democrats anymore. That the Democratic Party and the radical left have been completely thoroughly co-opted by Marxists, by Marxist ideology, and every single one of their initiatives is Marxist ideology. Critical race theory, Marxist. Queer theory, Marxist. DEI, Marxist. ESG, Marxist. All of these different things, every single one of them. And if you don't understand that, then you're not the proper fighter here. So I did enjoy this back and forth, but it's also important to analyze these candidates now as they are going back and forth to see, do you know how to fight correctly? Do you know how to fight? And that's one of the things I appreciate about President Trump, by the way, is he's savage. He knows, he's a brawler. He will go out there and he will fight for what he wants. And if that means decimating anybody that gets in his way, so be it. I actually kind of respect that about him. I don't think it's properly placed when it's aimed at DeSantis, but overall, that characteristic I respect about him. It's why he won in 2016 against not only Hillary Clinton, but against the entire media apparatus that was dedicated to taking him down. So a couple of the questions that I'm looking for answers in the behavior of these candidates is, do you acknowledge the reality of the political enemy that we're facing? And are you looking for validation from people who hate you? This is actually a very, very important question to try to ascertain an answer to when it comes to these candidates, because there are Republicans whose voting records are pretty good, whose principles sound pretty good. They articulate ideas and positions on the right side of the issue, but they desperately seek the validation of the left. They desperately want a collegial relationship with their Democratic colleagues. They desperately want one nice thing, one acknowledgement from the mainstream media. And they're always kind of looking like, man, I just want the cool kids to like me. If that's the character quality in a candidate, we should reject that candidate. Because if you have even an ounce of that, then you are not the proper fighter for this fight. And that's what we need. We need someone who is courageous, and we need someone who's a fighter, but we also can't allow it to distract from the real enemy. And now that's when we get to January 6th, because the reason we need a fighter, someone who's courageous, someone who understands that there's no compromising. There's no compromise that can be had right now with the radical left. They are corrupted by Marxism. We're seeing evidence of this in almost every portion, not just of politics right now, but in every portion of our country, from our school system to TikTok, to our criminal justice system. And that brings me to what I want to talk about January 6th. There's two things that have happened, two updates that have happened regarding the trial of the January 6th defendants, or not even the trial, the detention and the punishment that's being levied against the defendants, the January 6th defendants. The first thing is an article from the Washington Times talking about how January 6th defendants, some of whom were not even charged with felonies. They were charged, perhaps convicted of misdemeanors. That's like disorderly conduct or trespassing or minor vandalism, like misdemeanors. They're being debanked. Debanked is exactly what it sounds like. It means a bank calls you and says, sir or ma'am, you have your money in our bank right now, and we are going to give you a week, 30 days to remove that money. Otherwise, we are closing your account and you will forfeit anything that you leave in our bank. They evict you. They cancel you. They force you to leave. And if you don't leave quickly enough, then they take away probably your life savings, whatever cash, whatever money you are holding in their bank. This is what the Washington Times writes. These defendants say they have been treated like domestic terrorists, despite convictions of relatively low-level crimes. What's more, an attorney for defendants blames the FBI and Justice Department for prodding financial institutions to treat the defendants like domestic terrorists. Derek Evans, a former West Virginia lawmaker who served 3 months in prison for one felony count of civil disorder, said that J.P. Morgan Chase shut down his accounts after giving him a terrifying ultimatum. The bank sent him letters telling him that he and his wife had 30 days to empty their accounts before Chase closed the accounts. 30 days or you're gone. Now think about that. Think about that. One felony count of civil disorder, 3 months in prison. Is this applied consistently across the board? Does this bank consistently evict any person that's convicted of any felony from their bank on that kind of short notice? The answer to that, of course, is no. The answer to that is this is selective targeting of these individuals that were involved in January 6th because, according to the attorney, the federal government is pressuring private institutions like these banks to cancel these individuals in the culture. And that's aside from the punishment in our criminal justice system. Then we have a pretty significant revelation from Joseph Hanneman at the Epoch Times. He writes, a federal prosecutor admitted in court papers that 3 D.C. Metropolitan Police Department undercover officers acted as provocateurs at the northwest steps of the U.S. Capitol on January 6th of 2021. 3 undercover police officers served as agitators to the January 6th crowd. This is what Hanneman writes. He said the admission came in a March 24th filing before U.S. District Judge Rudolph Contreras that seeks to keep video footage shot by the officers under court seal. The officers obviously had body cams. Hanneman writes, prosecutors accused the case defendant, William Pope of Kansas, of an illegitimate attempt to unmask the video as part of his alleged strategy to try the case in the news media. Pope filed a motion to remove the court seal on February 21st. I gotta tell you guys, anytime a court says that they cannot allow evidence like this, video footage, especially from video footage from police, which are paid for by taxpayer monies, they can't allow that to be public. It's too dangerous for you and I to see it, although the judge can see it. My red flags go way up. My red flags go way, way up. Unless this is showing some specific vulnerability to security to the Capitol. Like, remember when Tucker Carlson aired those tapes and he blurred out that one door because the Capitol Police had said, actually, there's some mechanisms on that door that we don't want the public to know about because it's how we properly secure this area. And we wouldn't want an adversary to know about that. So Tucker blurted out. That's fine. I don't have a huge problem with that. Although I got to tell you, it does spark my curiosity. I want to know what it is. But I do understand why he did that. That's not the argument that's being made here. The argument that's being made here is about the police officers themselves, that they are somehow deserving of privacy, even though they are public servants who acted as provocateurs on January 6th, while the January 6th defendants, all of these people who've been arrested, especially the ones who were arrested immediately after January 6th, were not given this same level of privacy. They had their faces splashed all over FBI wanted posters. Their phone data was tracked by the federal government. They were geo-tracked around the Capitol and in the days leading up to the Capitol when they were in Washington, D.C., which was a huge violation of privacy. And yet somehow these police officers, according to the judge, deserve to be anonymous, even though, listen to what they did. This is what Hanneman writes. Assistant U.S. Attorney Kelly Moran said the defendant is not entitled to undesignate these videos to share them with unlimited third parties. You and I. That's unlimited third parties are you and I. She says his desire to try his case in the media rather than in a court of law is illegitimate, and the government has met its burden to show the necessity of the protective order. The protective order would keep the videos hidden. This is what Hanneman writes. Videos long hidden under court seal have become a major topic, especially with prosecutors disclosing in a number of high-profile January 6th cases the involvement of multiple FBI informants. Pope is seeking to lift the court seal on the undercover video as part of his drive to obtain full access to video evidence held by the government. Pope is representing himself in the criminal case being prosecuted against him. At a hearing on March 3rd, Judge Contreras seemed sympathetic to Pope's motion to unmask the videos. This is what Pope told the Epoch Times. The officer clearly incited that area, and we still don't have video from all other undercover Metro Police Department. And as the numerous informants in the Proud Boys trial demonstrates, we are only just beginning to scratch the surface of FBI involvement. Hanneman writes, the undercover video, a portion of which is posted on Rumble on March 24th, shows 3 members of the Metro Police Department's electronic surveillance unit approaching the Capitol's northwest steps. One of the men, while surveying the crowd, said, somebody's going to get shot. Officer 2 replied, they're not going to shoot anybody. This, by the way, is very pertinent because the police did not believe that this was a dangerous event. They're not going to shoot anybody. Hanneman writes, along the edge of the Capitol property, Officer 2 encouraged one protester to go up to the building. Go join him then, he said. The man replied, no, I've got my bike to guard. Officer 1 repeatedly joins in chants of drain the swamp and our house, our house, our house. Remember, these are undercover officers we're talking about. So Hanneman goes, at the foot of the northwest stairs, someone leaned part of a bicycle rack against the balustrade. As a protester climbed up the makeshift ladder, Officer 1 shouted, "Come on, man, let's go, leave that." Officer 1 got help from a protester climbing onto the balustrade of the steps. Then surveying the people moving up the staircase, he shouted, "Come on, go, go, go." So what does this mean? Let's take a step back. What does this mean? It means that police officers of the Metro Police Department, undercover, disguised as the protesters around them, were directing and egging on the protesters to do things the protesters should not have been doing. This is worse than informants. Informants infiltrate and try to agitate groups to commit acts that they probably otherwise would not commit. These are people on the ground, undercover feds on the ground, directing people to do things they're not supposed to do. Hanneman continues, Officer 1 encouraged the crowd to move up the stairs with repeated shouts of keep going, and keep going, come on. Once Officer 1 jumped from the balustrade onto the stairs, he passed someone he knew, a man in a blue sweatshirt wearing a dark cap, protective goggles, and what appeared to be a Halloween mask. Pope wrote in an earlier case filing, this video clearly evidences undercover law enforcement officers urging the crowds to advance up the stairs and the scaffolding towards the Capitol on January 6th. The government may claim that incidents like this did not happen, but the facts show they did. In fact, the prosecutor, Moran, acknowledges such in a motion filed on March 24th. She said the specific footage, GoPro video recorded by a Metro Police Department police officer who was stationed at the Capitol in an evidence-gathering capacity, LOL, captures the officer shouting words to the effect of go, go, go. At other times in these videos, the officer and two other plainclothes officers with him appear to join the crowd around them in various chants, including Drain the Swamp, USA, USA, and Whose House? Our House. Okay, so we're gonna break this down in just a second, but I gotta talk about Genucel first. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time ever, our friends at Genucel are including both the Ultra Retinol and Dark Spot Corrector in their most popular package at Genucel.com/Liz. Right now, you can save 70% off Genucel's most popular package just in time for the warm spring weather. Featuring Genucel's Ultra Retinol that contains a powerful retinol alternative, safe on your skin in the summer sun, and Genucel's Dark Spot Corrector to reduce the appearance of dark marks and sunspots from long summer days outside. I literally cannot wait. Plus, you will receive Genucel's world-class under eye bags product for those annoying under eye bags and puffiness, and with its immediate effects, you will see results in as little as 12 hours guaranteed or your money back. Don't wait. Visit Genucel.com/Liz to save 70% off their most popular package. Plus, every order subscription includes a luxury gift box with 2 free springtime essentials. That's 2 free gifts, plus free concierge shipping for a limited time. Go to Genucel.com/Liz. That's GENUCEL.com/Liz. Genucel.com/Liz. So what does this mean? What does this mean? Undercover DC police officers, disguised as the people around them, were agitating the crowds to do things they weren't supposed to do. So when we've said for the past 2 years now that this was staged by the feds, January 6th was staged by the feds, this is what we're talking about. January 6th was staged by the feds. The feds were orchestrating this. They were directing this. It seems like every week now we get more and more information, details corroborating what we already know, but it's nice to have the proof of it. This is a tweet from Julie Kelly. She goes, this is what we know. Numerous police informants, undercover DC police acting like Trump supporters, plainclothes Capitol Police, DC U.S. Attorney also undercover, intel warnings ignored, intentional lax security, no idea of the pipe bomber, uncharged provocateurs, all surveillance video under wraps except to promote the quote-unquote insurrection narrative. At least 100 boxes of evidence never released by the January 6th committee. Ditto for many transcripts. The January 6th committee never interviewed Chris Wray or Stephen D'Antuono. Still don't know who erected the Noose platform. No accountability for the Department of Justice lying that Kamala Harris was in the Capitol when she was, inexplicably, at DNC headquarters where the so-called bomb was found. No records from Pelosi or McConnell's offices who were responsible for security on January 6th. My question is very simple. How could anybody in their right mind think that this is an insurrection? How could anybody in their right mind believe that this was organic? How could anybody in their right mind ignore the evidence before our very eyes that this was coordinated by the feds, planned by the feds, agitated by the feds, so that the feds could charge Trump supporters and American people concerned about what happened in November of 2020 and the months leading up to November of 2020 as domestic terrorists, to chill our speech and violate our rights. This is one of the most significant revelations that we have seen, well, since Tucker Carlson aired the other tapes. But that's what's funny about this. Every time we get a material good that has to do with January 6th, every time we have a witness that testifies, every time we have video from the Capitol or video from outside the Capitol or audio of police officers or a police officer interviewed, every time we have tangible evidence, it's exculpatory evidence to people who participated in January 6th. And I understand that there was some vandalism that happened. I understand that there was some breaking of glass. I'm not condoning any of that. That was wrong. We all know that was wrong. But that's not what these people are being accused of. These people are being debanked. Their families are being kicked out of banking institutions because the feds who provoked this want them to be squashed. They want them to be erased. They want them to be canceled. And it's bad enough that it's happening to these people. It's terrible, and we should speak out against it and stand up to it and force our elected representatives to make this stop. It's also, by the way, one of the things that we should demand from candidates running for president to actually see, well, what have you done? What have you done? Have you stood up for these people? Have you used your voice? Have you used your money? Have you used your office? What power do you have to help? And how have you used this? Did you only use it when it was politically advantageous, or have you been standing up for these people all along? But if it can happen to the people who were at the protests on January 6th, it's only a matter of time until it happens to you and I. That's a material point here. This is the strategy of the feds. This is the strategy of the Democratic Party. It's why I don't care about the infighting and the bickering. I want to find the best fighter, because what we're up against is no silly Democrat. What we're up against is not simply leftists on college campuses who, once they get to the real world and start paying taxes, they'll understand that their socialist ideas are stupid. No. What we're up against is a force that actually wants to stop us from being able to participate in our country because we dare to question their lying, their cheating, and their stealing. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button below, and ring the bell to make sure you never miss a video.